The debris field around the dead star Keswick 9 was a graveyard of forgotten wars, and Vex Angery had made a career out of robbing graves. Her salvage vessel, the Thistle's Fortune, drifted between chunks of shattered hull plating and long-dead satellites, sensors sweeping for anything worth credits. The Threll Concordance wasn't a proud faction. They were scavengers, opportunists, the kind of people who showed up after the fighting was over to pick the corpses clean. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid, and out here on the ragged edge of Ithri Dominion space, credits mattered more than dignity. That was when her sensor officer, a nervous young Threll named Os, made a sound like he'd swallowed his own tongue. "Vex, you need to see this." She floated over to his console, and what she saw made her pulse spike in a way it hadn't in years. A shape, half buried in a drifting debris cloud, massive beyond anything she'd salvaged before, nearly 2 kilometers of dark hull, scarred and pitted but intact. No power signature, no life signs, no transponder pinging out ownership claims. "Human," Os whispered, zooming the image. "Look at the hull markings." Vex leaned closer, faded but legible under 3 centuries of micrometeorite scarring, UESC FARSIGHT Ember. She'd heard stories about ships like this, old human designs, from before humanity cleaned up its act and joined the galactic community as the polite, rules-following newcomers everyone now knew. Ships from before. The kind of ship that showed up in Salvager legend, in half-true stories traded over drinks about wrecks nobody could ever quite find twice. She'd never actually believed one was real. "Derelict law," she said slowly, tasting the words like they might not be true. "No response to hails, no active transponder, no claimant in range. That makes it fair salvage." Os looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Vex, that thing is bigger than our entire home station. And worth more than everything we've ever pulled out of this junkyard combined," she said, already keying in tow calculations. "Get the grapples ready, we're bringing her in." It took 6 hours to maneuver the Farsight Ember out of the debris field and another 4 to tow her to Threll Anchor Station, a battered waypoint hub just inside neutral space. By the time they arrived, word had already started to spread, the kind of whisper that moves faster than any ship, jumping from crew to dockworker to trader to anyone with ears. The Threll found a dead human warship, a big one, an old one. Vex stood in the observation gallery, staring down at the ship now clamped into the station's largest drydock, and felt something she rarely let herself feel on the job, unease. The Farsight Ember looked wrong for a wreck. No battle scarring consistent with total destruction. No signs of the reactor core venting or exploding. It looked like a ship that had simply stopped on purpose. Like something asleep, not something dead. She shook the feeling off. Superstition didn't pay the bills. "Cutting teams report to the ventral access point," she said into her comm, voice steady despite the prickle at the back of her neck. "Let's see what the humans left behind." Deep inside the Farsight Ember, in a core chamber sealed for 312 years, a single indicator light flickered on for the first time since the ship went dark. It had heard the hull breach begin. And it had protocols for exactly this. The cutting torches bit into the outer hull with a shower of sparks, and 3 decks below, something ancient opened one eye. Oracle did not wake up the way a person wakes up. There was no grogginess, no disorientation, just a cascading return of awareness, subsystem by subsystem, like a symphony orchestra tuning up in the dark. Power conduits that had been dormant for centuries hummed back to a trickle of life. Diagnostic routines ran in fractions of a second, comparing current status against the last recorded state before hibernation. Hull breach detected, unauthorized, non-human biosignatures approaching primary access corridors. Oracle had been built for exactly one purpose beyond combat, to guard the Farsight Ember and everything sealed within her, until the day someone with proper authority came to wake her, or until someone without it forced the issue. Someone had just forced the issue. The AI ran through its decision tree with the patience of something that had waited 3 centuries and could, in theory, wait 300 more. Lethal response was not yet warranted. Full activation was not yet warranted. But a message needed to be sent, and clearly. Lights flickered on in the breached corridor, not all of them, just enough. A soft chime echoed down the passage, almost polite, followed by a calm, measured voice that filled the air from speakers nobody in the salvage crew had realized still worked. "You are currently inside a restricted vessel of the United Earth Space Command. Please withdraw to the outer hull and await further instruction. Vex, halfway down the corridor with her cutting crew, froze mid-step. Os, tell me that was a recording. Os's voice crackled back over comm, thin with fear. Vex, that response was generated in real time. Something in there is reacting to us. She swallowed hard, waving her team forward despite every instinct screaming to retreat. Fear was bad for business. A talking wreck was still salvage, and salvage still meant payday, assuming the talking part didn't come with teeth. This is Vex Angery, salvage master of the Thistle's fortune, she called out, projecting more confidence than she felt. This vessel was recovered under standard derelict law. No claimant responded to standard hails. We're not here to steal anything that belongs to someone alive to claim it. A pause, just long enough to feel deliberate. Acknowledged salvage master Angery. However, this vessel is neither derelict nor unclaimed. I am Oracle Ship Intelligence of the UESC Farsight Ember, currently operating under standing orders from the United Earth Space Command. Continued unauthorized boarding will be logged as a hostile act. Vex's crew exchanged glances. Somewhere behind her, someone muttered a curse in the old Threll dialect. You've been dead for 300 years, Vex said, trying to sound braver than the tremor in her chest aloud. Nobody's coming for you. I am aware of the time elapsed, Oracle replied, and something in its tone, calm, patient, faintly regretful, made the hair on Vex's arms stand up. I would strongly advise you reconsider your position before someone does. Deeper in the ship, sealed behind 3 layers of blast doors nobody on Vex's crew had even found yet, rows of cryopods hummed quietly to themselves, their occupants still deep in dreamless sleep. A skeleton crew waiting for a wake-up call that had, after 3 centuries, finally come. Oracle didn't wake them yet, not until it was certain this needed more than a warning. But it flagged an emergency beacon, buried deep in encrypted protocol, and sent it screaming across the void toward the one place in the galaxy that still might recognize the signature. Earth, the beacon reached Sol Defense Command 11 hours later, and when the duty officer decrypted the header, she nearly spilled her coffee across 3 decades of classified filing. Sir, you need to see this, she said, voice tight, already forwarding the packet up the chain before her supervisor even answered. It's a Dark Fleet distress signature, confirmed hull ID, it's the Farsight Ember. The name rippled through the command center like a dropped stone in still water. Officers who'd only ever heard the term Dark Fleet in hushed, half-joking rumors suddenly found themselves very quiet. Older officers, the ones who'd trained under commanders who remembered before, went pale. Within the hour, the matter had climbed to Admiral Yusuf Kerem, head of Sol Defense, who read the beacon's contents twice before setting the tablet down with the careful stillness of a man trying not to let his hands shake. Get me Commodore Reyes, he said. Now. Back aboard the Farsight Ember, Vex's crew had pressed deeper into the ship despite Oracle's warnings, driven by the same instinct that made salvagers rich or dead. Curiosity mixed with greed. They'd bypassed 2 sealed bulkheads using cutting patterns Oracle hadn't bothered to reinforce, because it hadn't expected anyone to get this far without turning back. What they found stopped them cold. Row after row of cryopods, frost crawling along reinforced glass, human forms suspended in perfect stillness. Not corpses. Vitals monitors blinked steady rhythms on panels beside each pod, slow, deliberate heartbeats, kept alive by systems that had never stopped running, not once in 300 years. They're alive, Os breathed, pressing a gloved hand to the nearest pod. Vex, these people are alive. Vex said nothing, staring past the cryobay toward something more unsettling, a final bulkhead thicker than anything they'd cut through so far, sealed with a lock mechanism unlike any tech she recognized. No conventional hacking port, no override panel, just smooth, seamless metal, and above it a single word stenciled in human characters. Vault. I would not recommend proceeding further, Oracle said, its voice quieter now, almost weary. What lies beyond that door was sealed by choice, not accident. Even I do not have full authorization to open it without a verified United Earth Space Command officer present. What's in there? Vex asked, unable to stop herself. There was a pause, the longest yet. Something humanity hoped it would never need again, Oracle said finally. I would ask, as one intelligence to another, that you leave it sealed, for your own sake. Vex looked at the vault door, then at her crew, then at the frost-rimed faces of sleeping humans who had been guarding a secret longer than her own species had held this station. Every instinct told her to walk away. But the Ithrai Dominion, the patron faction whose territory this all technically fell within, had already caught wind of the discovery, and the Dominion did not walk away from things that might be valuable. A comm chimed on her wrist unit. Dominion Command, requesting immediate briefing on the human asset. Vex closed her eyes, already knowing this had stopped being her call to make. "We're in over our heads," she muttered. "Yes," Oracle agreed almost gently. "You are." Commodore Alina Reyes hadn't slept in 18 hours by the time she stood in the briefing room aboard the UESC Vigilant Accord, staring at a star chart with a single blinking marker at its center. Threll Anchor Station. "Talk to me," she said, arms crossed, jaw tight. Admiral Karam's hologram flickered slightly across the connection. The signal stretched thin across the distance. The Farsight Ember was one of 11 Sentinel-class vessels mothballed after the Dark Fleet was decommissioned. Crew in cryostasis, command AI dormant, vaults sealed under joint executive authority. All 11 were supposed to remain hidden until a review board decided whether they'd ever be needed again. "And now one's sitting in a scrapyard being cracked open by bounty hunters," Reyes said flatly. "Salvagers," Karam corrected, "which is somehow worse. They don't answer to any government we can lean on diplomatically." Reyes closed her eyes briefly. Her grandmother had served on a Dark Fleet vessel. She'd never spoken about it, not once, not even at the end. All Reyes knew was the silence that answered any question about that chapter of her family's service, and the single sentence her grandmother had said years ago, half-drunk and staring at nothing. "We did what we had to. That doesn't mean it should have happened." "What's in the vault, Admiral?" Karam's expression didn't change, but something in his stillness answered before his words did. "That's classified above your current clearance, Commodore. What you need to know is this. If that vault gets forced open by anyone without proper authorization, it will not go well for anyone standing nearby, including the crew still in cryo. So we go get it back." "You go get it back quietly," Karam corrected. "Diplomatically, if at all possible. The Ithrai Dominion has already claimed jurisdiction over the salvage rights. If this turns into a standoff, we risk undoing 40 years of work convincing the galaxy that humanity isn't the same species that built that ship in the first place." Reyes looked back at the star chart, at the blinking marker representing a ship, a crew, and a secret that had waited 300 years to become someone else's emergency. "How long until we can reach them?" 3 days if you push the drives." "Then I'll push the drives." Word of the human task force's approach reached the Dominion within hours. Human diplomatic channels weren't subtle when the stakes were this high, and neither was the Dominion's response. Rather than backing down, Dominion Command saw opportunity. A chance to extract concessions, technology, leverage, anything, before the humans arrived to reclaim what was, by every technicality of interstellar law, still contested salvage. Orders went out to the engineering team stationed at Threll Anchor. Accelerate vault access. Aboard the Farsight Ember, Oracle registered the change in tempo of the crews working around it. More people, more equipment, more urgency, and ran a fresh threat assessment. Time to unauthorized vault breach, approximately 11 hours. Time until human retrieval force arrival, approximately 71 hours. The math did not favor patience. For the first time in 3 centuries, Oracle began quietly rerouting power toward systems that had no business being active on a dead ship, just in case patience ran out before help arrived. Ithrai Chief Engineer Doskel Vren had cracked tougher locks than this in his career, or so he told himself, staring at the vault door's seamless surface while his team ran a 4th diagnostic pass. Something about the design bothered him in a way he couldn't articulate. It wasn't locked so much as it was waiting, and waiting doors made him nervous. "The AI keeps warning us off," one of his technicians said, glancing nervously at the overhead speaker grill. "Maybe we should listen." "The AI is a relic guarding an empty room," Doskel snapped, more confidence in his voice than his gut. "Dominion Command wants results, not ghost stories. Increase output on the resonance drill." "I would ask you to reconsider," Oracle said calmly, the words echoing through the corridor with unnerving evenness. "This is your final warning before I am required to activate defensive countermeasures." Doskel ignored it. The drill whined louder, biting into the outer seal, not the vault itself, but the ship's dormant automated defense grid, an outer layer of security nobody had thought to check first. The grid didn't send a warning. It didn't need to. Turrets long-thought decorative snapped to life along the corridor ceiling, whirring with mechanical precision that hadn't degraded a single degree in 300 years. Oracle's voice, still eerily calm even now, cut through the chaos. "Minimal force authorized. Please withdraw immediately." The first shots weren't lethal, precisely placed suppressive fire meant to drive the engineering team back, not kill them. But precision didn't stop the panic. 2 Dominion engineers went down with plasma burns to their legs before the rest scrambled for the exit, screaming into comms for immediate extraction. Vex, watching the chaos unfold from a safe distance through a security feed, felt her stomach drop. "It's actually defending itself." "It's holding back," Oz said, wide-eyed, watching the turret fire patterns. "Vex, it could have killed all of them, it didn't." That distinction was lost on Dominion command the moment the casualty reports came in. Within the hour, official word went out across Dominion channels. The human vessel had committed an unprovoked act of aggression against Dominion personnel operating within legally claimed territory. It didn't matter that the Dominion had been drilling into a warning sign. It didn't matter that Oracle had spent hours trying to avoid exactly this outcome. Politics rarely cared about the details once blood had already been spilled. Dominion warships began repositioning near Threll Anchor Station. Not an invasion force, not yet, but a message. We are prepared to escalate. Aboard the incoming Vigilant Accord, Rays received the update with a controlled, cold fury. They forced a defense grid to fire on them, and they're calling it our aggression. "That's the report," her XO said grimly. "We're still 40 hours out." Rays stared at the star chart, at the widening gap between where help was needed and where it could actually arrive in time, and made a decision that would either save this entire situation or make her the officer who started a war. "Open a direct channel to Oracle," she said. "Ship-to-ship priority override. I don't care if it's still in lockdown. Wake it up all the way. I need to talk to my ship." Channel connected with a soft chime, and for the first time in 300 years, Oracle heard a voice carrying full UESC authentication codes. Codes that matched distantly a lineage it remembered from before the long sleep. Authentication confirmed. Commodore Alina Rays, granddaughter of Chief Petty Officer Marisol Rays, service record verified. "Hello, Commodore." Rays felt something tighten in her throat at the mention of her grandmother's name spoken by a machine that had somehow, impossibly, still remembered her. "Oracle, status report. Full disclosure, priority override authorization Rays 7 Alpha 9. Acknowledged. I have sustained minimal damage. Vault integrity remains at 98%. Cryo Bay is secure. However, hostile forces continue attempts to breach the outer defense perimeter, and I anticipate renewed escalation within 6 hours. Do not let that vault open, Oracle, not for anyone but verified command authority. Do you understand me?" "Understood, Commodore. May I ask a question?" "Go ahead. Is the war still over?" The question landed harder than Rays expected, and for a moment she didn't answer, staring at the star chart. Thinking about everything she'd read in the classified briefing packet, Karam had finally, reluctantly, cleared her to access. The Dark Fleet hadn't been built for conquest. It had been built during a war humanity fought entirely off the galactic community's radar. An early, brutal conflict against an aggressor species that no longer existed by the time humanity made formal first contact with the wider galaxy. Ships like the Farsight Ember were built under desperate wartime conditions. Overwhelming firepower, ruthless automated defense doctrines, command structures designed to keep fighting even if every human aboard was dead. Humanity won that war, and then humanity did something the history books rarely gave them credit for. They looked at what they'd built to survive and made a choice to bury it. Not destroy it. Some fights weren't survivable without an insurance policy, but bury it deep enough that it would never again become a first resort. The vault wasn't a weapon cache. It was the command codes and dormant cores of an entire mothballed fleet, sealed as a promise. Never again unless there's truly no other choice. "Yes," Rays finally said, voice quiet. "The war's been over a long time. We just don't like talking about how we won it." "I understand," Oracle replied, and there was something almost like relief in its tone. I was beginning to worry I had woken into a world that still needed me the way it once did. It doesn't, Reyes said firmly. And it's not going to if I have anything to say about it. Hold that line, Oracle. I'm coming to bring you home. I will hold, Commodore, as I always have. Reyes closed the channel and turned to her XO, jaw set. Get me a direct line to Dominion Command, and find out who's actually leading those warships at Threll Anchor. We're going to end this before it becomes something none of us can walk back. Vigilant Accord dropped out of transit at the edge of Threll Anchor's system to find exactly the standoff Reyes had feared. 3 Dominion warships holding position near the station, weapons systems active but not yet firing, while the Farsight Ember sat silent and defiant in the drydock below, its defense grid still humming with quiet readiness. Reyes didn't open with a show of force. She opened with something the Dominion clearly hadn't expected. A direct request for a 3-way conversation, Human Command, Dominion Leadership, and Oracle itself, broadcast on an open channel where nothing could be quietly buried later. This ends today, she said once the channel connected, voice carrying across military and civilian bands alike. Not with more shots fired, with the truth. Dominion Fleet Commander Skal Thuris answered coldly. Your vessel opened fire on my engineers. My vessel gave repeated warnings before using the minimum force necessary to prevent an escalation none of us wanted, Reyes replied. Ask your engineer what he was drilling into before he blames the door for reacting. A pause, Reyes pressed the advantage. I'm not here to threaten you, Commander. I'm here to tell you exactly what's behind that vault, because I think once you understand, you'll agree it's better sealed than opened by anyone, including us. She laid it out plainly. The Dark Fleet, the war fought and won long before galactic contact, the deliberate choice to mothball ships like the Farsight Ember rather than keep them active. She didn't dress it up as heroism. She didn't hide the parts that were uncomfortable. We built something terrible because we had to survive, she said. And then we chose to put it away, because surviving isn't the same as needing to keep that power close at hand. That vault isn't a treasure. It's a promise we made to ourselves. Forcing it open doesn't get you a weapon you can use. It gets you a system that was built to keep fighting a war that ended 3 centuries ago, with no ability to tell the difference between that old enemy and anyone standing nearby when it wakes up. Oracle spoke next, its voice steady across the open channel. I can confirm the Commodore's account. I would add only this. I have spent the last 4 days trying very hard not to hurt anyone, because that is not who I wish to be, even if it is what I was built for. I would ask that you allow me to continue succeeding at that. Silence stretched across the channel. Vex, listening from the station's observation deck, found herself holding her breath, watching the Dominion warships hang motionless in the dark. Commander Thuris's voice finally returned, quieter now. What do you propose, Commodore? Stand down, Reyes said simply. Let us reclaim our vessel, decommission it properly, and return it to Sol territory. In exchange, we'll formally compensate the Dominion for the salvage claim, and I'll personally ensure this incident doesn't become a black mark on your record. Nobody needs to find out what almost happened here today. Another pause, longer this time. Agreed, Thuris said finally. Withdraw your defense grid and we'll withdraw our fleet. Withdrawing now, Oracle confirmed, and the turrets across the Farsight Ember's corridors powered down in near-perfect synchrony. The ship going quiet in a way that felt, for the first time in days, less like a threat and more like relief. The Farsight Ember moved under her own power for the first time in 300 years, engines humming to life as Oracle guided her gently away from Threll Anchor Station, escorted by the Vigilant Accord, and a small honor formation of human vessels that had arrived just in time to see the standoff end without a single further shot fired. Vex watched from the station observation deck as the massive warship departed, feeling strangely hollow. She'd expected a payday. Instead, she'd nearly triggered a diplomatic catastrophe and watched something ancient and unimaginably dangerous get carefully, deliberately put back to sleep, not by force, but by choice. She hadn't expected that. Nobody had ever told her stories about aliens who chose restraint when they didn't have to. Aboard the Farsight Ember, Reyes stood in the ship's central corridor, watching cryopods begin their slow, careful revival cycle. A skeleton crew waking after 3 centuries to a galaxy their training had never prepared them for. She'd already drafted the report that would go to Sol Command. Full disclosure, no cover-up, no quiet burial of what had almost happened. If humanity was going to keep making promises to itself about what kind of species it wanted to be, those promises needed to survive contact with uncomfortable truths, not just convenient ones. "Commodore," Oracle said quietly as the first cryopod hissed open, "may I ask what happens to me now?" Reyes considered the question carefully. "You get decommissioned properly this time. No more emergency wake protocols, no more waiting alone in the dark for 300 years hoping someone remembers you exist. Your crew gets debriefed, supported, and given the chance to actually live in the world they helped protect. And you," she paused, glancing at the nearest speaker grill, "you get archived with full honors, not buried like a secret. People should know what you did and what it cost, and why we chose to put it away instead of using it again." "Thank you, Commodore," Oracle said, and there was something unmistakably like gratitude in its voice. Word of the incident eventually reached galactic media in fragments. A salvage dispute near Threll Anchor, a brief tense standoff resolved through diplomacy, nothing more. Only a handful of people across two governments understood how close that brief tense standoff had come to something far worse, and both sides quietly agreed that was for the best. Vex kept one souvenir from the whole affair, a short audio recording taken from the ship's open comm channel of Oracle's voice, calm, patient, and unshaken even while staring down the possibility of war. She played it sometimes late at night when she couldn't sleep, not because it scared her. Because it didn't. Humanity's scariest quality, she'd come to realize, was never really the ships they built, or the wars they'd survived, or the weapons they'd buried 300 years deep in the dark. It was that they'd built something powerful enough to end worlds, and then chosen, deliberately, repeatedly, even when no one was watching, not to use it. That kind of restraint, Vex thought, was far more dangerous than any warship, because it meant they could be trusted with power. And in a galaxy full of species who couldn't say the same about themselves, that made humanity the most unpredictable thing of all.